Have you ever gone to bed completely exhausted, but the moment your head touched the pillow, your mind suddenly woke up? You replay conversations, worry about tomorrow, think about money, your family, your mistakes, until you realize it's already 2 a.m., then 3, and somehow you're still awake. The strange part is, you're not trying to solve your problems. You're simply trapped inside them. If this has been happening to you, tonight's story may help you understand why. Because everything changed for Michael the night he stopped trying to solve tomorrow, before morning had even arrived. Michael was 54. He had a good job, a wife who loved him, 2 wonderful kids. From the outside, his life looked exactly the way he had hoped it would. But almost every night, the same thing happened. Around 2 in the morning, his eyes would open. He never knew why. Sometimes it was 2:07, sometimes 2:41, sometimes a little after 3. He would look at the clock, close his eyes again, and tell himself, go back to sleep. For a few seconds, it almost worked. Then the first thought arrived. Don't forget tomorrow's meeting. A few seconds later, did I pay the insurance bill? Then another. Emma's college tuition is due next month. Then another. I should call Mom tomorrow. She didn't sound well yesterday. Michael wasn't trying to think about these things. They just showed up, one after another, like someone quietly turning the pages of a book he never wanted to read. He turned onto his left side, pulled the blanket a little higher, closed his eyes again. Nothing. He reached for his phone. 2:38 a.m. He didn't check social media. He didn't watch videos. He only looked at the time, hoping somehow more time had passed than it actually had. It hadn't. He put the phone back down, stared into the darkness, and waited for sleep to return. It never came. The next morning, his wife smiled and asked, "Didn't sleep well again?" Michael smiled back. "I'm fine." It was the same answer he had been giving for almost 2 years. After a while, he stopped wondering why he couldn't sleep. He simply accepted it. Maybe this is just what happens when you get older. But a few weeks later, someone said something to him that completely changed the way he understood those long, sleepless nights. Michael slowly sat up. He looked at the clock. 2:46 a.m. He knew there was no point lying there anymore. Careful not to wake his wife, he quietly got out of bed. The house was completely silent. He walked downstairs, poured himself a glass of water, and sat alone at the kitchen table. No phone, no television, just the sound of the refrigerator humming in the background. He rubbed his eyes. They burned from another night without sleep. For a moment, he simply sat there, doing nothing. Then he heard footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps. His father walked into the kitchen, 79 years old, still recovering from hip surgery. He had been staying with Michael for a few days. The old man looked surprised. "You're awake too?" Michael smiled, a tired smile. "Yeah, couldn't sleep again." His father poured himself a glass of water, then sat down across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Sometimes, silence is easier than pretending everything is fine. After a minute, his father looked at him and asked quietly, "Is work that bad?" Michael stared into his glass. "Not really." "Then what keeps waking you up?" Michael didn't answer immediately, because he honestly didn't know. Finally he said, "Nothing really. It's just, the moment I wake up, my brain starts going. Tomorrow's meeting, the bills, the kids, Mom, the house, everything." He laughed softly, not because it was funny, because he was embarrassed. "It's stupid. I'm lying in bed, and somehow I think I can fix my whole life before sunrise." His father smiled, not the kind of smile that says, "I have the answer," the kind of smile that says, "I know exactly what you mean." The old man took a slow sip of water. Then he said something Michael would never forget. "When I was your age, I thought staying awake proved I cared. I thought if I worried enough, my family would be safer." He looked at Michael. "Do you know what finally changed?" Michael shook his head. His father smiled gently. One morning, your mother asked me, "Did staying awake last night solve anything?" Michael stayed quiet. The old man continued. I couldn't answer her, because the truth was, nothing had changed. The bills were still there. Work was still waiting. Life was still life. He placed the empty glass on the table. The only thing I lost was another night with the people I loved. The kitchen became silent again. Michael looked out the window. The sky was still dark. Nothing outside had changed. But for the first time, he wondered if the real problem wasn't that he couldn't sleep. Maybe he had been trying to carry tomorrow every single night. The next few nights, Michael still woke up. 2:14, 2:39, 2:58. Different numbers. The same night. The same mind. Sometimes, he wondered if he was even afraid of tomorrow anymore. Or if he had simply forgotten how to stop thinking. One evening, his wife quietly reached across the couch and touched his hand. You've been here all night. Michael looked at her. What do you mean? She smiled sadly. I've been talking to you for 10 minutes. You nodded. You even answered. But you weren't really here. Michael didn't know what to say, because she was right. His body had been sitting beside her, but his mind had already left the room. The following Saturday, Michael was changing the oil in his old pickup. His father sat nearby, watching, not talking, just watching. The sound of birds, a gentle breeze, the smell of engine oil. It should have been a peaceful morning. After several minutes, his father finally smiled. Still at work? Michael laughed. What? His father pointed at the wrench. You've been holding it for 5 minutes. Michael looked down. His hand hadn't moved. His eyes slowly drifted across the garage. For a moment, he couldn't remember what he had been doing, because he hadn't been in the garage. He had been replaying Monday morning. And again. And again. His father didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Sometimes, silence tells us more than advice ever could. Michael quietly finished changing the oil. But something stayed with him all the way home. A question, one he had never asked before. How much of my life have I already missed because my mind was somewhere else? Maybe you've done the same thing. Someone you love was talking to you, and later, you couldn't remember a single word they said. Not because you didn't care, but because your mind was already living tomorrow. If that moment feels painfully familiar, don't leave just yet, because Michael is about to discover something that changed far more than his sleep. It changed the way he looked at every single thought. The following week, nothing extraordinary happened. Michael still went to work, still paid bills, still drove the same road every morning. Life looked exactly the same, but something inside him had quietly begun to change. Not because his thoughts disappeared. They didn't. They still showed up every day. Sometimes while driving, sometimes in the shower, sometimes just before falling asleep. The difference was, Michael had stopped assuming they were telling him the truth. One Tuesday afternoon, his manager sent him a short message. Can we talk tomorrow morning? That was it. No explanation. No details. Michael felt it immediately. His stomach tightened. His mind got to work. I must have done something wrong. Maybe they're cutting staff. What if I've disappointed everyone? By the time he drove home, his mind had already imagined losing his job, telling his wife, selling the house, starting over at 54. None of it had happened. Not even close. The next morning, Michael walked into his manager's office. He took a seat. His heart was pounding. His manager smiled. I wanted to thank you. Michael blinked. For what? The new warehouse system. It's working better than we expected. I wanted to know if you'd be willing to lead the next project. For a second, Michael didn't know what to say. On the drive home that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about the night before. How easily his mind had turned one simple message into the worst day of his life. That night, he sat alone on the back porch. The air was cool. The neighborhood was quiet. He remembered something his father had once told him when he was a boy. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. Back then, he thought his father was talking about childhood fears. Now, he realized his father had been talking about life. Michael looked up at the night sky. For years, he had believed every frightening thought. The moment it appeared, he never questioned it. He simply followed it, as if every thought deserved his trust. But maybe that was where the real exhaustion began. Not in his body, not at work, not in his responsibilities, but in the habit of believing every story his mind told him. That realization stayed with him long after the sun had disappeared, and without knowing it, Michael had taken the first real step toward sleeping peacefully again. The following Saturday, Michael drove over to his father's house. The old garage was exactly the way he remembered it. Boxes stacked against the wall, old tools hanging from rusty hooks, shelves filled with things nobody had touched in years. His father smiled. "Help me clean this place before your mother starts throwing everything away." Michael laughed. "Deal." For the next hour, they worked without saying much. Old photo albums, fishing gear, Christmas decorations, things that had quietly followed their family through decades. As Michael lifted a dusty cardboard box, something slipped out. A small book. Its cover was worn. The corners were bent. Someone had read it many times. Michael picked it up. "You've had this forever?" His father looked over, then smiled. "Longer than you've been alive." Michael brushed the dust off the cover. Letters from a Stoic. He slowly opened it, not looking for answers, just curious. Several pages had been folded. Whole paragraphs were underlined. Tiny notes filled the margins in his father's handwriting. He smiled. "You actually read this?" His father chuckled. "More than once." Michael kept turning the pages. His eyes stopped. One sentence had been underlined so heavily, the ink had almost pressed through the paper. "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Seneca. Michael read it again. Very slowly. The garage became completely quiet. He wasn't surprised by the sentence. He was surprised because it felt familiar. It wasn't teaching him something new. It was describing the last 2 years of his life. He looked over at his father. "Is this why you asked me if staying awake had ever solved anything?" The old man smiled. "No. Life taught me that." He gently tapped the open book. "This just helped me understand why." Michael lowered his eyes back to the page. For a long time, he didn't say a word, because for the first time, he realized something that quietly changed him. His sleepless nights had never been caused by tomorrow. They had been caused by trying to live tomorrow before it ever arrived. A few weeks later, Michael woke up again. 2:26 a.m. The room was dark. The house was silent. For a moment, he lay there without moving. The thoughts arrived, just as they always had. "Don't forget tomorrow's meeting. You should check on Mom. What if the economy gets worse?" They sounded familiar, almost predictable. Michael smiled. Not because his problems were gone. They weren't. The meeting still mattered. His family still mattered. His responsibilities were still waiting for him. Life hadn't become easier. He had simply stopped asking the night to solve what only tomorrow could answer. He turned onto his side, took one slow breath, and quietly whispered, "Tomorrow is still coming, whether I stay awake or not." For the first time in years, those words felt true, not comforting. Nothing had changed. The world was still moving. Bills would still arrive. People would still get sick. Unexpected things would still happen. Life would always ask something of him. But lying awake, imagining every possible future, had never protected the people he loved. It had only stolen the only thing he could never earn back: his peace. The next morning, Michael woke before the alarm. He walked downstairs. His wife was making coffee. She looked at him and smiled. "You look different." Michael poured himself a cup. He looked out the kitchen window. The sun was just beginning to rise. After a long silence, he answered, I don't think I'm sleeping better yet. He smiled softly. I think I'm finally thinking differently. His wife reached for his hand. Neither of them said another word. None was needed. More than 2,000 years ago, Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Michael used to think those words were philosophy. Now, they felt like experience, because some of the heaviest burdens we carry never exist outside our minds. And the moment we stop believing that every frightening thought deserves our attention, we begin to give ourselves something we may not have felt in years. Not certainty, not a life without problems, but something far more valuable, a quiet mind. So tonight, if you find yourself awake, staring into the darkness, while tomorrow keeps asking for your attention, remember this. You don't have to solve tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow will still be there when the sun comes up. Sleep isn't something you force. Sometimes it's something you allow. Once you finally stop caring, the future that hasn't arrived. Until next time, take care of your mind. And as always, keep walking the Stoic path. Maybe your story isn't exactly like Michael's. Maybe you don't wake up at 2 in the morning. Maybe it's 3. Maybe it's 4. Or maybe your mind never waits until bedtime. Maybe it follows you all day. While you're driving to work. While you're sitting at dinner with your family. While someone you love is talking to you. And part of you is already living tomorrow. If that's you, you're not weak. And you're certainly not alone. For thousands of years, people have carried the same invisible weight. The Stoics never promised a life without uncertainty. They never promised a life without pain. What they offered was something much quieter. The courage to stop suffering for futures that haven't arrived. Because peace doesn't come from controlling tomorrow, comes from returning to today. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself one simple question. How many of the burdens I'm carrying actually belong to today? You might be surprised. How many of them can quietly wait until morning? And if Michael's story felt a little too familiar, perhaps someone else you love needs to hear it too. Share it with them. Sometimes, one story arrives at exactly the right moment. And if you'd like to walk this path with us, through more ordinary lives, quiet struggles, and timeless Stoic wisdom, I'd be honored to have you here. The simple subscribe tells YouTube to bring these stories back to you when you need them most. And if this story gave you even one moment of clarity, leaving a like is a small way to help it reach someone else who may be lying awake tonight, believing they're carrying the weight of tomorrow alone. If this story found you tonight, perhaps it found you for a reason. We'll be here when you're ready for the next one. Until then, sleep if you can, rest if you can't. Either way, be gentle with yourself, because even the strongest minds need somewhere to lay their burdens down. And remember, tomorrow doesn't need you tonight. Until next time, keep walking the Stoic path.